No.
Is that you, Gary? Are you there? He seems to be kind of going in and out. But...
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the executive meeting of the 28th of July, 2022. I'm very pleased that the new administration has decided that we will be supporting families in receipt of free school meals during school holidays up to and including May of 2023. There are a few teething problems with moving to a provider called Charis. I contacted them last week and they have reacted very quickly to sort out the issues. The theme, as most people will know by now, of this administration is to promote partnership working wherever possible across the council and with outside bodies. I've asked the Deputy Leader of the Council to look into developing partnerships across the borough, and he will give us a short update of his plans at either the next executive meeting or the next full council. May I ask if we've got any apologies for tonight's meeting? The only one I'm aware of is Sarah Kerr, and Prue is online. I need to make the following statement. Please ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off. If you are participating via Teams when you are not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphone. If you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, could everyone participating via Teams turn off their cameras and only turn them on when speaking, and also introduce themselves whenever they speak? Please note that to avoid the chat function on Microsoft Teams being used inappropriately, it has been disabled for this meeting. Please also note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. Members of the executive and officers who are supporting the meeting are myself as the council leader, Stephen, and the exec member for business and economic development, Stephen Conway, the deputy leader of council and executive member for housing, Rachel Bishop Firth, executive member for equalities, inclusion and fighting poverty, Prue Bray, who is online. It's the Executive Member for Children's Services. Lindsay Ferris, the Executive Member for Planning and the Local Plan. Paul Fishwick, the Executive Member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. David Hare, Executive Member for Health and Wellbeing and Adult Services. Ian Shenton, Executive Member for Sport and Leisure and the Environment. And Imogen Shepherd-Debay, the Executive Member for Finance. Supporting us from the officers are the Chief Executive Susan Parsonage and Lucy-Anne Bowker from Democratic Services. We now move on to the minutes. I have a proposer that the minutes are a true record. Rachel Bishop Firth and Imogen. Yeah, proposer. Seconder, David Hare. All those in favour? Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Stephen.
Yeah, I need to declare an interest, Clive, as a director of Loddon Homes and a director of Wokingham Borough Council Holdings, and perhaps more pertinently, because neither of those prevent my full involvement in the council, in the executive meeting, but more pertinent is the fact that I'm the council's representative on Polehampton Charity. That has made me automatically trustee of Polehampton Charity. Polehampton Charity are a party involved in item 22 on our agenda, so I've been advised that I will need to play no part in that debate, not vote, and even I have to leave the room while you discuss it. So I hope somebody will come and collect me when you've finished.
Okay. David?
Sorry. I'm an executive member of Optalis.
The director of
Director, sorry. And I have to leave him.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry about the slight delay there. I'm a non-executive director of WC Holdings Limited, Berrybrook Homes and WHL, and therefore I have to declare personal interest, which does not necessitate me leaving the room when that item is discussed, which is just as well because I'm not in the room anyway. Great, thanks.
Okay, and for myself, I'm a non-executive director of WBC Holdings and Loddon Homes Limited. I think that covers all of the declarations of interest. So we move on to public question time, and the first question is from Colin Watts. Would you like to come and ask your question, Colin?
Good evening, everyone.
Okay.
Mr. Jones, at the end of April visit to the University of Reading campus to present the sole group alternatives to housing at Hall Farm, I think you were really clear in your objections to the building of the 4,500 homes at Hall Farm. Can you confirm that this remains your position and that the next version of the local plan update will not include any significant development at Hall Farm?
Thank you very much for your question. My colleague Lindsay Ferris responded to a similar question on the 30th of June at that executive meeting. The last administration approved the strategy put forward in the local plan update revised growth strategy consultation 2021, which proposed 4,500 houses at Hall Farm. My administration will be working with officers to look carefully at options for how we can best plan for our housing and development needs going forward in ways that ensure that our local plan will pass as sound at a public examination. Clearly, I cannot predetermine this process. However, I can assure you that we are going into this process open-minded, as we must, and that we will carefully consider all the views that have been expressed by residents alongside those of stakeholders and, importantly, the technical evidence that must guide us to the best and most sustainable locations for new development to be located. Since the election, we have written to the Secretary of State highlighting our concerns about how the high housing numbers currently expected of Wokingham Borough are calculated and enforced. We have engaged our local MPs and have received their strong support to our efforts. Experience both here and elsewhere across the country shows that we must put a new local plan in place which delivers on our development needs. No doubt what it eventually includes will not suit everybody, but not having an effective plan would mean less control over where development happens. Hall Farm cannot be dismissed as a possibility without good reason, and at this stage our officers are still gathering evidence upon the best options and solutions available. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. I think it's clear to the residents around the Hall Farm site that huge, and I mean huge amounts of work are going on by the university and the planning department. And our great concern is this becomes a fait accompli. Even this week, we've got a drone flying over for a week and a half over the site, constantly having people come from the university. And in a conversation that we had with the university just the other week, it is totally clear that whatever the university says about engaging with the local community, the line about the 4,500 is there, and it will stay there from the university's mind.
Yeah.
So the question is, it's the concern about it being a fait accompli because all the work that both the council's planning department and the university are engaged in.
Yeah, all I can say is that I cannot predetermine the process. So, thank you very much. And the next question, Paul Stevens. Good evening, Paul. Your question is for the Executive Member for Planning and the Local Plan.
Yeah, for Lindsay Ferris. The local plan update has to set out housing plans for Wokingham up to 2038. The Hall Farm proposed plan goes way beyond that date, with only half of the 4,500 homes being completed by 2038. Can you confirm that the next version of the plan will only be for the period up to 2038 and will not try to create a plan beyond that date?
Good evening, Paul. Thank you for your question. I hope I could speak loud enough. My colleague, Councillor Jones, has already outlined in his answer to an earlier question that the new administration will be working closely with officers to look at all options for how we best plan for and manage the development we have going forward in ways that ensure our local plan is found to be sound at public examination. Councillor Jones explained we cannot predetermine this process. The National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, requires local planning authorities to put plans in place which provide for new housing supply for at least 15 years from its date of intended adoption. So this we must do. In addition, where a strategic allocation of scale is proposed, government expects the council to look at that allocation on a comprehensive basis and make clear within the local plan what is proposed in the longer term to ensure that the most sustainable development solution is planned for that site over time rather than in a piecemeal fashion. This approach would be the same for Hall Farm or any other major allocation of similar scale proposed by the plan. Councillor Jones has also outlined our lobbying of the government and our concerns regarding how housing needs are calculated. We will be continuing to lobby the government to change the methodology in parallel to our work on the local plan, whilst being clear our aim is to work towards having a new local plan which can be found to be sound at examination.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Thank you for that. The number of houses proposed are at least in part predicated upon the developer's need to build 4,500 houses to pay for the level of infrastructure required to make the site viable. Can you clarify precisely how many new houses are required for Wokingham to have a viable plan that would meet the requirements set by the current national government housing targets?
We have at the moment a figure of 781 houses per annum, and as a local plan we have to have 15 years of housing supply from the start of the local plan.
Does that, okay, I'll go away and work that out myself. Okay, 781 times 15, thank you.
That's what we're trying to get reduced.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. Third question is from Tony Johnson. Good evening, Tony.
Good evening, thank you. Please could the Executive Member for Health and Wellbeing and Adult Services comment on the Equalities Impact Assessment for WBC's proposed 70-bed dementia care home, which was approved by WBC's Planning Committee under application 211777 on the 13th of July.
Thank you, Tony. Hello. Adult Services has worked in partnership with Untitled Limited, technical advisors and the Council's property team in the development of the outline planning application. The application ensures that building design meets the appropriate standards and utilises best practice from across the sector. As is required, a Stage 1 Equalities Impact Assessment was completed by Wokingham Borough Council at an early stage of the project, and the assessment did not identify an adverse impact on the protected characteristic under the Equalities Act. However, the Council's Adult Services has always been committed to making certain that this site is appropriate and has planned due diligence ahead of a reserved matters planning application. This would include commissioning an independent external care provider to complete an assessment of the site to ensure its ability to deliver high quality care to vulnerable people. It is worth noting that the proposed dementia care home in Townley East will provide us with the capacity it needs to meet the demand and complexity of an ageing population. We estimate that the number of older people expected to require residential and nursing care provision funded by the Council will rise by at least 17% by 2025. Forthcoming reforms to the adult social care will place increased pressure on the care sector from October 2023. Central government's ambition to reform the sector have not, unfortunately, been matched by the funding required to meet this enormous challenge. These reforms only increase the need to deliver the right care at the right time and at the right price.
Thank you very much. Do you have a supplementary, Tony?
I do, thank you. Thank you for providing an answer on behalf of the Council, especially for talking about the due diligence at the reserved matters stage where you plan to have somebody else to come in and do a report. Although there are many other impact assessments made as part of the planning application, the Equalities Impact Assessment doesn't appear to have been included with the document pack, which, given Justice Lewis's 2018 ruling to Bath and North East Somerset Council, that the public sector equality duty applies at the outline planning stage, not just at reserved matters, is somewhat odd. If it had been published, then members of the planning committee might have been able to take a properly informed judgment. However, As Lord Chief Justice Hewitt pointed out in 1924, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. So please could you explain why Woking Borough Council has not shown itself to be compliant with the case law and thus may have opened itself up for judicial review?
I'm not sure, and we'll send you a written report. I mean, I'm quite honest, I'm not a planner.
Thank you very much, Tony. Then we move on to member questions. And the first question is from Charles Margetts. I don't think Charles is here. Did you want to say anything, Prue?
I did. I'm having trouble turning my camera on. Sorry, let's see if I can do it. No. Sorry, I'll have to speak without my camera on. Sorry. Charles is not here. This is essentially the same question that he asked me at the council meeting last week. But I know there may be people watching who would like to know what the answer is. So I can confirm that the plan is still that the sixth form at Bowhunt will open in September 2023, and Charles and his fellow ward councillors have already been sent that information in the update that I promised them at last week's council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. You're fine. Councillor Margetts will receive a written reply. The next question is from Councillor Gary Cowan. You want to ask a question, Gary?
At the last planning committee meeting, I voted against Houtley East as putting people who have no say in the placement next to noisy, polluting motorways is wrong. Dementia patients or the relatives have no say where they live if they are occupants of a council-run care home. The business case makes no reference to other council-owned land away from motorways such as Farley Hills Closed Primary School, and the business case recommends the delivery model should be a joint venture with a development partner, but fails to consider the council's own companies. Would a better business case be the location of the care home at the closed Farley Hills school site and use the council-owned housing companies to build even more desperately needed affordable houses at Towtley? Thank you.
Gary, I'm taking your question instead of David. We were pleased the planning committee accepted that this is a suitable location for a care home. Mitigation against road noise will of course need to be taken into account in the design of the building, and I'm confident that the council can deliver a high quality care home on this site to the standards that our residents both expect and deserve. With regards to the decision-making process for dementia patients, the Mental Capacity Act 2005 protects vulnerable people over the age of 16 around decision-making. Adult social care will support residents to make their own decisions if they can. We want to uphold their rights while living in care homes. If a person is assessed to lack capacity to consent to living in a care home, the deprivation of liberty safeguards mandate a set of assessments that are undertaken by two assessors independent of those commissioning the placement to consider what is in the person's best interest and the less restrictive option. In making this best interest decision, the assessor is required to consult with a variety of people, including the adult concerned, who will still have views, wishes and feelings even if lacking capacity, and relevant others, including friends and family. With respect to your subsequent points, it is true that the council owns other land and that other such sites might also be suitable for a new care home provision. However, having established that the Towtley East site is acceptable under planning, this site is the quickest route to deliver the facility and thus start addressing the increasing revenue spend pressures that the council is facing from having to fund placements in private care homes. Failure to proceed on this site will lead to a delay in the delivery programme of approximately 18 to 24 months, whilst an alternative site is identified, survey work undertaken, designs worked up and planning secured. A 2-year delay in delivery will only act to exacerbate financial pressures on adult social care, especially in light of the impending social care reforms. In terms of the residential delivery, please note that the business case for the residential delivery is not being presented in the executive report. Rather, the executive is being asked to note the delivery options. As is set out in the report, the full business case will be prepared and reported back to executive and potentially full council in due course.
Thank you, Lindsay. Do you have a supplementary, Gary?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Clive. Thanks for that answer. Yesterday's Daily Mail headline is new evidence in a landmark report by a committee of government advisors stating that air pollution, not just noise, contributes to the decline in mental ability and vascular dementia. And I believe the council should not disregard the committee of government advisors, who will be much more informed than our council officers. With the availability now of a government landmark report on air pollution as a cause of dementia, it's now for the executive to decide if Towtley is still a good option or should they look elsewhere for a more suitable site. I raised the suitability of Towtley and other sites with planning officers, but they simply stated there were not material considerations. That view was supported by the council's legal department. I would point out that Planning Regulation Clause 9 of Schedule 12A of the Town and Country Planning Act 1992 on exempt information states, and I quote, "Information is not exempt information if it relates to proposed development for which the local planning authority may grant itself planning permission. To withhold information from a member is in breach of the Act, and it's reprehensible as withholding information from the public about the expenditure of public monies on projects where the Borough Council is effectively both judge and jury, as is the case with Towtley East. An independent inquiry into the role of the planning department would not go amiss here either, as I'm sure our residents would appreciate it, and it would give greater public confidence in that department. So really, if you see the Daily Mail headline yesterday, which is that, it would suggest that air pollution is a very serious issue, and to take a decision based on the limited information you've got now, I think would be inappropriate.
Thank you, Gary.
Yes, thank you, Gary. Yes, I did see reference to that issue and report of the committee that was in the papers and in yesterday, and I think we will need to take due reference to that from that. On the other point that you've raised, can I suggest that obviously you were felt uncomfortable as to what happened on this issue, that if you feel so much, there's the process of making a complaint through to Andrew Moulton and do that. And I would also recommend that you write to me with some of your concerns so that I can look at them as well.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Gary. And the final question is from Jim Fruin. Evening, Jim. We can bring the microphone to you if you want.
Right, thank you. My question, in answer to the full council on July the 21st, question 34.2, it's clear that vulnerable residents will be moved from Suffolk Lodge to Towtley as part of the Towtley project. Please provide risk assessment and mitigation details on how this move would impact vulnerable residents, especially how the changes in noise levels and air quality between the two sites would impact.
Thank you, Jim. Suffolk Lodge currently provides less than 30% of the residential care the council commissions. Although it has a care quality commission rating of good, it cannot meet the needs of all the older individuals the council has to provide residential and nursing care for. The proposed new dementia care home in Towtley will provide local residents with care and support needed to meet an ageing population. It will promote a better quality of life and improve welfare for residents through more personalised care and support. We're committed to ensuring the scheme reflects best practice in dementia design. The design of the new home is inspired by recent research and learning from the pandemic to create a safe, welcoming place that promotes the well-being and good health of all people with dementia. We intend to work closely with Untitled to ensure a safe and smooth transition for residents to the new care home. Indeed, we've made provision of £500,000 in the medium-term financial plan for this. Individuals all have very different needs, and this funding will ensure the transition works for everyone. The Mental Capacity Act 2005 protects vulnerable people over the age of 16 around decision making. Adult social care will support residents of Suffolk Lodge to make their own decisions if they can, in order to uphold their rights while living in care homes. If a person is assessed to lack capacity to consent to living in a care home, the Deprivation of Liberty safeguards mandate a set of assessments that are undertaken by two assessors, independent of those commissioning the placement, to consider what is in the person's best interest and the less restrictive option. In making this best interest decision, the assessor is required to consult with a variety of people, including the adult concerned, who may still indeed have views and ideas and wishes and feelings, even if they lack capacity, and relevant others, such as friends, family, or advocates. The assessment will consider the benefits and burdens of a particular placement against other available options to determine what is in the individual's best interests.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary, Jim?
Jim, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. You didn't actually answer the question about air quality and noise, but I joined and supported our partnership because I believe that we would build on the good things started by the previous administration and that we would challenge things that we believed to be not so good. In my opinion, this Toutley plan is not such a good idea. It appears to be being done for speed, to provide a number of places, and is not taking into account the health and well-being of the residents being placed there. Given the fact that the public question tonight and now two of the member questions have highlighted a number of concerns with this Toutley plan, my supplementary question is, will this executive defer the decision on Toutley until clarification is made on the points raised tonight and points raised outside?
I don't think we can defer a decision, but certainly as the process goes along, we will make sure that, that air pollution and noise are kept to an absolute minimum and within all legal standards of this country. And we would do that anyway. And that is the most important thing. I do not want the people who I'm serving as executive member to be any worse off at this new Toutley development than at Suffolk Lodge. And I'm sure that's why you say this as well. And we will endeavour to make sure that it is as fair as possible. And yes, the noise is kept down low, below standards, and also air pollution.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That concludes public and member question time. We now move to matters for consideration and item 16, which is the capital programme review. Imogen?
Okay, good evening. Yes. It has become very clear over recent years that the amount of money being borrowed by this council has been out of control. Us, as in opposition, we realise that this in turn puts pressure on our revenue budgets for interest repayments on these loans. So now, once we've inherited this budget, we've had a chance to look at it more thoroughly. The revenue budget really should be all about committing to the services for our residents and the staff who provide these services. The capital programme is funded from grants, community infrastructure levy funding from developers and loans. This report represents a lot of good work from our officers in terms of looking at the projects that we had in the capital programme and making the adjustments about what is necessarily likely to be achieved and identifying efficiencies. There was a significant budget gap identified in the MTFP for the capital programme, and this work has begun the part of the process as necessary to bridge that gap. I'm pleased with the work that has been done because it is actually good news. Some items have been moved to later years so we could smooth out the need for funding, and some items have been removed altogether. These current changes will have a knock-on effect into next year too. I wish to thank our officers for their commitment to making this work. In addition, we are also here to agree more funding for the move the funding for the managing and congestion and pollution project to protect it to projects to supporting buses, cycling and walking, or active travel if you would like. I shall leave it there because I know Paul wants to say something.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Paul?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I wish to highlight that the 4 million of managing congestion budget will be reinvested into active travel and bus priority, and that will align with the emerging local cycling and walking strategy and support the revision of the bus service improvement plan in the autumn of 2022, following feedback and discussions with the Department for Transport.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Anybody else wish to make any comment? No. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. Can I have all those in favour of the recommendation on page 17? Thank you very much. Now move to item number 17, revenue monitoring. Imogen again.
Okay, it's another one of mine. The revenue budget is essentially staff and the day-to-day services that affect our residents. This report highlights a predicted shortfall in the revenue budget of 2.2 million for this year. To be fair, when this budget was set, no one predicted the invasion of the Ukraine or the impact it would have on global fuel prices and inflation. Those current inflationary pressures also affect Wokingham Borough Council just as much as our residents. However, there has been some overambitious targets set in order to try and deliver a balanced budget for this year. To highlight a few of these challenges that are mentioned, we have £558,000 overspend on home to school transport. This is largely due to the high number of SEND children needing specialist school places and Ukrainian, Hong Kong and other children being brought to the area seeking sanctuary. Many of our schools were full to begin with, and as a consequence, we are now having to pay for these children to be transported long distances to the available school places around the borough. We are also expecting a £780,000 shortfall in car parking income. This is probably due to an overly ambitious income target being set. Since the COVID lockdown, people's driving habits have changed and people are using their cars less, which is good for the environment, but it does not help Wokingham Borough Council cover its bills this year. Inflation has also affected many of the things we need to buy. The inflationary increase in oil-based plastics means that the budget we inherited is currently £250,000, £250,000 short, when it comes to purchasing the blue bags for the waste collection. How to tackle this challenge is going to be something we need to look at closely over the coming months. We will aim to do the best we can to bridge this gap, and our officers are doing a deep dive to meet these challenges. But it does mean that we all need to pull together to find either more income to cover the shortfall or make saving in other ways. I shall leave it at that point. Any question?
Anybody have any questions for Imogen? Stephen?
Just an observation, really, that this is a snapshot of where we are now and what we're projecting from here. It's not the end result. And I think that's a really important point to underline. Imogen's made the point, but there's a lot of work going on to try and remedy this problem. And I thank her and our officers for the work they are putting in. It's incredibly important work.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. So we'll move to the vote. So we're voting on the recommendations for agenda item 17 on page 25. All those in favour? Thank you. And then we move to item 18, capital monitoring 2022-23, quarter one. Imogen.
It's me again, isn't it? This report shows the capital projects that we are currently working on, and it gives us a view of any up and coming issues that might be heading our way. One of the key things highlighted is the challenge we have around the Winners Triangle Parkway Park and Ride, where an unexpected water main was found during its build process. This is now an unbudgeted cost of 1.3 million attached to it. One of the things we also need to agree as a part of this is the 5.5 million spend on building a special educational needs and disability school, and this is coming from central government grant funding and will help us reduce the significant amount of money we spend on sending children outside of the borough to specialist schools. So building it will save us money in the long run. I know Paul wants to ask on this one. So.
Thank you. Anybody else want to say anything? Paul?
Yes, thank you. I did want to highlight about the Winners Park and Ride, which is shown on page 43, right in the middle, £1.3 million overspend due to the consequences of the Thames water main. This appears to have come to light in the autumn of 2021, but unfortunately no budget estimate was made at that time, so it falls to us to actually remedy this. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? No, so we'll move to the vote, and it's agenda item 18, and we're voting on the recommendation on page 39. All those in favour? Unanimous, thank you. So we move to item 19, which is council-owned companies. So I'd like to note the retirement from different council-owned companies of Councillor John Kaiser, Stuart Munro, Wayne Smith, Shahid Yunus and Norman Jorgensen, and to thank them all for their contributions to those companies as councillors. Oh, sorry, and also Charles Magetz, who has resigned as a director of Optilus. New directors are taking their place, and that is myself, Prue Bray, Stephen Conway, and David Hare. And we look forward to working with the non-executive directors of the housing companies to deliver more social rent in the coming years. It's clear that the management and the non-executive directors are very keen to work with us to do this. Do you want to say anything about Optilus, David?
We had our first board meeting this afternoon. I'd just like to say that David Birch, the CEO, was very honest, and I felt that was very good. He introduced a new HR person who has done a lot of work. She's been here 5 months. She's done a lot of work, but there is still a lot of work to set a foundation for Optilus, which is strong going forward. And David told us some things which, yes, were very honest. And he said, you know, this is things that have a negative, but we are now going forward. And that's very positive that he's seen things that are wrong and he's correcting them.
Thank you. Any comments from anybody? Anybody want to ask any questions? No. So we'll move to the vote, and we're voting on.
I have my hand up.
Oh, sorry, Prue.
Sorry, I let me be in the picture. I just want to say we had the first board meeting with Berrybrook Homes and Rachel yesterday, which was also a very positive meeting. And I would like to thank the other non-executive directors who welcomed me, and we had a very interesting 2-hour meeting, which I'm sure will produce a lot of good outcomes. They're very keen to work with us, as you said, Clive.
Thank you, Prue. Anybody else? No. Okay, so we'll move to the vote. It's on agenda item 19 and the recommendation on page 47 of the agenda. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. So we move to item 20. Ian?
Yes, this report seeks approval for two things: to progress a new 3G pitch in the early area and to use Section 106 funding for enhancements to physical activity facilities at Forest School.
Following the problems which were identified with locating a 3G pitch at Laurel Park, which I won't go into in detail, there remains a need for additional football capacity in the borough, both for training and for weekend fixtures. So an option appraisal analysis was therefore carried out, which has identified that Maiden Early School would be the most suitable location based on existing facilities and access to the site, whilst also providing usage for the school itself. Extensive public consultation will be carried out prior to the planning application process, and planning approval will then lead to the bid for Football Foundation funding. Installation is expected to be during the 2023 summer school holiday, with the facility opening in September 23, whereafter income will exceed ongoing costs. Approval is also being sought this evening for enhancements to the swimming pool and sports facilities at Forest School, including refurbishment of the gym and the pool floor. Once completed, the improved facilities will be available for community use, in particular for groups of vulnerable adults or children. And the pool will also provide for groups that have modesty requirements in swimming, which will be unique amongst the council's swimming facilities. Funding for this will be by Section 106 Finance.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Would anybody like to say anything? Ask any questions? I'd just like to add a few comments, Ian. Sorry, David.
I was just going to say, you said there will be good consultation about the Maiden Early pitch, and that will be very thorough, I believe, and must make sure that it talks to all local people and football clubs around to make sure that it is appropriate and not just something that we insert in the community, but something that the community wants as well.
Yes, the final details of the consultation are still being worked on by comms, but it will include a wide range. It will include the use of Engage, social media, physical meetings, but also widespread leafleting. And the clubs will be consulted, and some already have been, and they will be consulted via their coaching or management staff.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to hear that there is going to be extensive and proper consultation, that the Borough Council will be engaging with residents, that council officers will be available to meet with residents, that there will be extensive leafleting to houses in Early, and that the council's social media engagement will be extensive as well. I think there's also probably going to be a workshop that might involve Early Town Council. That would be good if that was happening. Some things that residents might want to raise would be car parking needs for this 3G pitch if it goes ahead, and questions about the floodlighting. Are they automatically going to go off when the period is finished in the evening? And we're going to need to look for some sort of screening and ensure that there's proper drainage to protect the nearby gardens. But as you have said it, Ian, and as you've mentioned, Councillor Hare, there will be proper consultation.
Yes, there will.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully, it will be widely agreed in the end, but no, we will take it step by step.
Yeah, and if there isn't any funding from the Football Foundation, then this wouldn't be going ahead.
That's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Okay.
So that puts a slightly tight timetable on, because the bid would have to be in by beginning of next year. And that would then hopefully be approved come April of next year, so that installation could go ahead in the summer holidays. Can't go ahead whilst the school is
No.
actually operating,
No.
clearly.
Of course it can't. But we have to go through the consultation first.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move to the vote. So this is agenda item 20 and the recommendation on page 51 of the agenda. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. And then we move to item 21. So does anybody want to say anything about this? Rachel? Thanks.
Yes, I just wanted to say a few words on behalf of the Embrook councillors. We wholeheartedly agree that the borough urgently needs more affordable housing and it needs more care home beds. Now, both we and our residents have concerns about this particular site, and we've raised these obviously on a number of occasions. We will continue to work to get these resolved at the reserved matters stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Stephen?
Thank you, Clive. Just to respond to Rachel's point, I'm very aware that the local members are concerned about various aspects of the outline scheme that's now got planning permission. I have to say, when I first saw the application, when it first came before the planning committee, I shared those concerns. But planning permission is now granted, and we should remember it is outline planning permission. There is still scope to address some of the concerns, I hope all of the concerns that you and your colleagues have raised and have been raised by Gary as well. I'm hoping that reserved matters application, when it comes forward, will have addressed a lot of these issues. It's also because there is some degree of flexibility about siting and measures of remediation to protect residents. It's also important, I think, to recognise that this master planning is dependent upon the delivery of housing that will actually generate the money to pay for the care home. That's a really important consideration here. What's pleasing is that the residential units will be at least 35% affordable in there. And as you quite rightly said, we are in need of more affordable and particularly social rent housing in the borough to meet the needs of those who unfortunately are priced out of the market. So we have to think about this in the round, and we also have to recognise that the stage we're at is outline. There's still scope for all sorts of work to be done to try and address the very legitimate concerns that have been raised.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Hare? Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Conway. I must say that the building of a new care home is in fact for me very exciting. It's something that we desperately need, and a new dementia care home of this quality, and certainly the quality will be excellent. It'll be one of the best, I believe, in the southeast, if not in the country, is important for Woking to make sure that we look after and serve the people of our borough. Suffolk Lodge is a well-loved care home. We all know that, but it's old and it's tired, and it doesn't serve the purposes as it should, and it doesn't serve the people as it should, even though it's still well-loved. Yes, it got a good rating, but we want to be excellent, and we couldn't be excellent in Suffolk Lodge even if we did everything that we could. So we want to have this, and as Councillor Conway said, this is an outline plan mission. There will be negotiations, there will be discussions as to sites and where things go, as to what goes where, as to the bunds and things like that. And hopefully we will make it as safe as we can for the people of this area, because I want nothing less.
Thank you very much. Lindsay?
Yes, I too fully support the building of a care home. but I just wonder whether we would look at our recommendation and whether we could add point 6 to take on board the points that both Gary and Jim have made about the specific issue affecting dementia patients and the noise and pollution, and that we include that section to say that we would like that area to be specifically looked into. And could I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Right, do we actually need a form of words?
I think we do.
Yeah.
We need a form of words that requests the officers to provide a report on the impact, as reported in the press, of poor air quality on dementia
And noise.
so,
It's poor air quality and noise.
and noise. Yeah.
And that's in the national press specifically.
National press, yeah.
Okay. Any other, do you want to say anything, Paul?
I wasn't.
Hang on, we've
Sorry.
got Lindsay's. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
As I said to Tony Johnson, we are certainly, yes, following best practice and doing due diligence, and will commission an independent external care provider to do an assessment of the site to ensure its ability to deliver high quality care to vulnerable people is not compromised. Yes, we can have this, and I'm quite happy to have this because I believe we're already doing that and we're making sure it is as good as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was going to raise the very same point which Lindsay has raised, that we must do absolutely everything we possibly can to keep the noise and air pollution levels within safe limits of this dementia care home, of that site.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think the first thing we have to do is vote on Lindsay's proposal to add that into the recommendation. You have seconded it, Stephen. So all those in favour of that addition? That's unanimous. And now we vote on the revised recommendation with the addition of item 6. So this is agenda item 21, page 59. All those in favour? Thank you. Unanimous. Now we come to item number 22.
This is the moment when I have to leave the room, I'm afraid.
Okay, in absence of Councillor Sarah Kerr, I will present this item. So there has been a local campaign for a permanent library in Twyford for, I would say, well over 20 years. There has been a huge amount of public support. There have been petitions, and I think it's been in different versions of neighbourhood plans, and I think it's fair to say that it's clear from some of the election results that have happened in Twyford that this is something that residents really do want to happen. There are a number of times over the last 20 years that this library has come to the council and it's been considered, and then it hasn't happened. But we are going to make sure that it is definitely going to happen. We pledged this when we were in opposition, and we are in a position to make sure it happens. I'd like to thank the Polehampton charity for engaging with the council for so long and for sticking with the council, and also pay tribute to the late Dave Turner, who was a trustee of the Polehampton charity and promoted the Old Boys School site and worked very, very hard to see a new library in this historic building. And I think it is worth noting that this Old Boys School really is a very important heritage asset, and using historic buildings plays a critical role for community cohesion and in shaping human health and societal well-being, as well as our individual and communal identity, and it helps us connect very strongly with the places where we live. The current Twyford Library is in a temporary building, and this old school building is going to provide a permanent home for us. It's a very good example of partnership working with the council, working with the Polehampton charity. Does anybody else want to say anything? Lindsay, thought you might.
Took some of my words, Mike.
Sorry.
That's all right. First one, as you said, is that the residents in Twyford have been pressing very hard, and we've been campaigning for a new library for a very long time, and it's at least 20 years. It's also important to note that this is a facility provided in the northern parishes, an area that I live and receives very little additional facilities, and will be used not just by residents in Twyford, but Charleville and Hurst and the other villages around, and maybe even from Wargrave, although there is a small library there. I would like to thank the Polehampton charities as well, because they have put a lot of effort in, and the late Dave Turner, who was really the person who got the old school site into the agenda as a site for the new library, because we've been looking around the village for a little while beforehand, and he spent many hours campaigning for this building to be put into use. And we pay tribute to him, and unfortunately is not here now, but we take that through. And it is also a clear indication of where the council wants to work in partnership with our bodies around the borough, and I think this is a good example of it, and we need to build on it. And I also, you touched on the fact that it is a heritage building that is currently being either underutilised or not utilised, put back into use.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to add anything? Ask any questions? No.
I have my hand up.
Sorry, Prue. I'm just not looking at the screen as I should be. Sorry.
I don't want to prolong it, but I did want to say that I've been a councillor 22 years, and the Twyford Library was already a problem in the state, in the temporary building it's in, when I joined the council, and the campaign to replace it had already started then. So this is a very long time coming. I think the Polehampton Trust has been thanked. I think they need to be thanked for their patience while the council has somewhat dragged its heels. Not messed them about exactly, but hummed and hard. And we can't do that any longer. This is a building which they have held on to for us, for our use. And it isn't just about the first phase of the library. The planning permission is wider than that there's a vision of a hub for Twyford in there. And that's really important for the community as well. So this is, although we don't have any more funding at the moment, this is phase one. It's not the one thing that we're going to provide, and I think it's important to hang on to that as well. And I think that the other two people that need to be thanked are Lindsay and Stephen for sticking with the campaign for so long, but also Dee Tomlin, who is a councillor in Twyford for many years and fought for the library herself all the time she was a councillor as well. So it's really good to be sitting here tonight, and although I can't vote for it, I would if I was there in person.
Okay, thank you, Prue. Lindsay? Yep.
There is the site where we have the current library, and I believe we've got an opportunity to make some revenue from that site at some point, which would then be used to help with the funding of the library in Twyford.
Yep, that is a possibility. Okay, thank you very much. I think we'll move to the vote. So this is agenda item 22, and the recommendation is on page 73. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Well, welcome back, Stephen. And David has left because he's a director of Optilus, so cannot take part in agenda item 23. So I will start off our discussion. We need to ensure the procurement business case for the development of the new dementia care home at Townley. Optilus will still be the provider so that we can manage the market and provide facilities such as a home for people with dementia who are challenging. A new contract is needed for Optilus as the new home will be larger than Suffolk Lodge. Current financial modelling would suggest that the care home will deliver around £377,000 per annum in financial efficiencies from 2025/26. The reforms within adult social care, however, are likely to increase the level of potential savings achieved from this scheme. It is therefore envisaged that the care home will support the delivery of additional cost avoidance in the region of £700,000 a year. We are proud to bring this care home to the executive. We need to find a site for a second care home, starting to look where this could be now. We would be able to save the council money and ensure that the market in care homes is sensibly resourced. The recommendation that the executive, number one, notes that the proposal to transfer services from Suffolk Lodge to the new dementia care home at Townley East, we delegate authority to the Director of Adult Social Care and the Director of Resources and Assets jointly, along with the executive members, to make any changes necessary to the contract between Wokingham Borough Council and Optilus Limited to give effect to this change in service up to a value of £2 million. Second recommendation delegates authority jointly to these to increase the value of the care contract in place with Wokingham Borough Council's local authority traded company, Optilus Limited, by way of contract variation up to the value of around £4 million, subject to inflationary increases to deliver the staffing requirements for the care home. Does anybody have any comments or want to ask any questions? Imogen?
It's kind of really more of a comment, really. As we know, most of the residents living in care homes in the borough are currently living in private care homes. And in October next year, as part of the government's reforms on adult social care, Wokingham Borough Council will be required to start assessing these people for their care needs and subsequently be expected to start covering the care costs when they reach their threshold of £86,000. So in order to manage these costs of care, we need to offer places in council-run care homes, which is why it's so important for us to have our own facilities for the people who need them. It's going to be the only way for us to manage the cost of care in the long run. Anything else would be not good news. So I fully support this in terms of from the financial aspects.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else wish to add anything, say anything? No. So this is, we will vote on the recommendations as agenda item 23 and the recommendations on page 87 of the agenda. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. So we move to item 24.
Would you like me to speak on this one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, bro.
So is David back? I can't see him.
Yes,
so.
he is. Yes.
Okay, thanks. This is a fairly simple thing. We've got a major system in children's services which we're relying on to do an awful lot of the work that we need done. It's coming to the end of the contract, but more time is needed to assess exactly what we need the new system to do than is than is available before the end of the contract. So they're asking for an extension to actually make sure we get the next contract right, which I think is pretty important because the amount of data that and reports and things that children's services have to be produced, and it's so heavily regulated on the education side as well as the children's social care side, we actually need to make sure we've got the right system. Part of the report is in part 2. That's because obviously we can't tell people how much we think we're going to spend, because then any suppliers that we go to will know how much they want to charge us, which is not very sensible. But the figures are there for councillors to view. We can't release those to the public. But I think this is a reasonable extension to ask for. And it's more important we get it right than we do it quickly and get it wrong. So we're just asking for a slight variation of the normal procedure, really, and an extension of the contract beyond what would normally be allowed.
Okay, thank you, Prue. Anybody like to say anything, Stephen?
It's just that Prue, because she's ill with COVID still and can't join us, can't actually propose this. So I think you will have to propose it in her absence.
Yes.
And I'm happy to second it.
Okay. Right. So we can, so I would like to propose that we accept the recommendation, item 24, the recommendation set out on page 105. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. I think we have come to the end of the agenda. Nothing else. So thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much to all the members of the public who have attended this